Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
That was great, thank you. And I particularly love, I don't remember the line about, I've been conditioned not to make mistakes, and I can't live that way. So I know for myself and for maybe some of you might have feel like you were conditioned to not make mistakes. Like it wasn't okay to make mistakes. And there's no need for us to live that way. So I want to tell you about something. I'm going to start off by telling you something that happened to me. It was about a year and a half ago that I heard a voice. And this voice said something to me. And it was somewhere in between a command and an invitation, more like a challenge. And this happened about 18 months ago, and it has percolated around in my heart and in my mind ever since. Sometimes it's more in the forefront, and some other times it drops to the background. And I'll tell you how it happened. But before I go forward, I should tell you this wasn't a voice like from beyond. This wasn't a burning bush kind of moment. I was on my computer doing some work, and I found that I get distracted very easily. And so I like to have some concentration music on YouTube. It has all this concentration music. I have it playing in the background. It's just kind of a wah, somehow that helps me stay focused. And all of a sudden, I'd kind of noticed that it had clicked off and there was a voice talking, but I wasn't paying much attention until I heard the voice say this: "You have no choice. You must fall in love with everyone." And I thought, what, me? Fall in love with everybody? Oh, okay, that's a little bit, let me switch the channel here. And it was a man called Sadhguru, who maybe some of you are familiar with. He's a yogi and a mystic. And I had watched some of his videos before. So YouTube thought I needed to hear this one. But they also think that I need to hear, women that are almost 50, quit dressing this way. I'm like, okay, YouTube, mind your business. But on this day, I was actually grateful for this, because something in this idea of you must fall in love with everyone. Of course, we know we're supposed to love everybody, right? We're a love everybody church at Unity. But there's something different about this call to fall in love with everyone. So I just kind of sat with that. But tonight, what I want to talk to you about is freedom and fulfillment here and now. And some of the questions that I have, and maybe you have too, is we know we want freedom. We know we want to live a life of fulfillment. So why does it feel like a lot of times that we have obstacles in the way of experiencing our freedom? And that maybe we address this obstacle and then we have another one, or maybe we're free in this area of our life, but over here we're feeling very constricted and like we can't have much movement. And why is it that fulfillment always seems to be one step down the road? Well, maybe it's tied to a particular thing. Like I felt very fulfilled, for example, when my kids were growing up and then they left and then there's that piece missing. So does this mean I'm not living a fulfilling life now? So there's all these ideas that our freedom and fulfillment there's obstacles to them and that they can't quite happen now, but maybe somewhere in the future they're going to happen. So we're going to kind of explore some of these questions. Is this true? And maybe there's another way to look at this. And then what in the world does this have to do with falling in love with everybody? We'll find out. You can tell me at the end if you think it has anything to do with that. We'll see. So one of the first things I want to do, though, you may have noticed you got a piece of cardstock when you came in, if you're here in the pyramid. And I invite our online friends, if you have access to something to write with and a piece of paper, that would be great. And if you feel more comfortable doing this exercise in your imagination, that's fine too. So before we get into it, I want to tell you where I got this from. So I love to read, and one of the things I do to my own detriment sometimes is I get excited about books, and then I'm reading 5 at a time. I don't finish one, start the next one. I'm reading them all over the place. And right now, one of the books I'm reading is called "Where'd You Park Your Spaceship?" It's by one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Rob Bell, and it's a very interesting book. And so this exercise comes out of a scene from that book. I don't want to give any spoilers in case you decide to get it, because it's a pretty cool book. And so you have your piece of paper here. So I just want to invite you, first of all, to lay aside any judgment about yourself as an artist. This is not to create a piece of fine art, although if it accidentally happens, that's wonderful too. And so what you're going to do on that piece of paper, the first thing you're going to do is just draw a simple, very rudimentary stick person in the middle of the paper to represent yourself. Or like I said, you can hold this in your imagination if you'd rather not. And again, very rough, rustic. Barbara, are you looking for some paper? I think there's some in the back. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So you draw a stick figure on the paper, stick figure to represent yourself on the middle of the page. Okay, so everybody have their stick figure or some semblance of one? And I'd like you to, just for a moment, think about your life and kind of like components. Think about maybe if you work, or if you have a creative hobby, or if you're an artist, and draw symbols, something, and again, we're not trying to be perfect here, something that you'll know what it means. Maybe animals that represent the pets in your life. Maybe some stick figures to represent family. Think about where you kind of spend a lot of your time. Where do you go? Maybe you have family that lives somewhere else on the other side of the world or the other side of the country. Maybe you have something that symbolizes that. These are what you think of when you think of what makes up my life experience. I'll take just a moment to do that. Okay, we'll just take it just a little bit longer. Sure, many of you have very full lives, so there's lots of components on there. We don't have to get them all on there. Okay, so I invite you just to put your pen or your writing implement aside. Take a look at the paper. And where do you see yourself on that paper? That's my question. Where do you see yourself? In the middle. Yes, you're thinking, well, Stacy, that's a trick question. You said, draw myself in the middle as a stick figure. But I want you to hold the paper. Maybe hold it up a little bit. And don't worry, nobody's going to look at your drawings. And you are, in fact, yes, you're the stick figure, but you are, in fact, the paper itself. You are the awareness within which all of those things are happening. So many times when we are finding ourselves in our daily life, it feels like we are this person down here. I don't know why I say down here, but we are this person and all these things are happening to us, or all these things we have to go and make happen, when in fact, that is just part of our awareness. We are actually the paper in its entirety itself. And this is what Panache Desai, we're going to talk about his book a little bit too, he calls our essential self. In Unity, we might call it our Christ nature, this awareness that we can align with the source of our being, the source of the universe, that we can be, you've heard the expression, in this world, but not of it, that there is something more to us than these things. And so when we are over-identified, with what Panache Desai says, when we are over-identified with this stick figure self, it can feel like life is an obstacle. It can feel like we have to make everything happen or it's not going to happen. It can feel like life is even sometimes against us. And we don't have that same bird's eye view that we have when we can connect ourselves with our essential self and to see that it's all happening within a larger thing that we are connected with. So Panache says this, and this comes from his book, You Are Enough, and we've been exploring that for a few weeks here at Wednesday night service. And he says that you are not your pain. You are not your position. You must learn to trust life and let go of all that is obstructing your view of your essential self. You must learn to surrender, knowing that in that act of surrender, you are letting go of the resistance to what is unfolding right now. And in that trust, there is freedom. So that freedom happens when we can trust that this is, and when we're in it, sometimes it's tough. It's not to say that things aren't happening that are difficult in this. But here's the thing, if we were to come back and meet here 10 years from now and do this same exercise, now your stick figure would probably look the same because stick figures look the same. If we had accurate drawings, we would look different. Our bodies would look different 10 years from now. Some of those components that you drew might still exist, and some of them may have gone away. Some of them may have dissolved. That is the nature of things in this realm. And when we can view ourselves as the paper, we tap into that part of ourselves that is eternal and timeless, and that all these things happen within, and there's nothing outside of that. This is the love of God. This is the circle of God. This is the infinite, the infinity of the universe. Nothing can happen outside of that. And so does this mean that our job is to just sit on a cushion and be the paper? Be the paper. That's all. We don't need to worry about all this stuff that's happening. If we're the paper, why does it matter? Well, it does matter. Because this is the work that we are here to do, to bring that essence of the infinite into the finite. And I think that one of the things that our unity principles help us do is to figure out how to do that. And so how would we act if we knew that we are bigger than what is happening around us, that we are bigger than our challenges and our circumstances? And what do we mean by bigger? What do we mean by essential self? What is the nature of the essential self? Well, our first unity principle says that there's only one presence, one power in this world, in our lives, and it is God and it is good. And frankly, you can call it whatever you want. You don't even have to call it God, but we know that it is good. And we can call it even love. That is the nature of it. We can call it oneness because it knows no separation. There's nothing outside of it. And so the second unity principle, now this is the one that got me when I came here. Because I thought, well, that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. That God is good all the time and that there's no resisting presence to that, that there is only one presence and it is for good, one power and it is for good. And then our second principle says something that blew my mind, which is, well, then guess what? Humans are good too. We cannot not be. If there's only one presence and one power, we are expressions of it. We are self-expressions of the divine, and we are good too. And not just the parts that we call good, the parts that we don't like, the parts that we're talking about in the meditation, the parts that you'd rather not be there, all of that is included too. All of it is included. And so if we come to our lives knowing this, then how much different will we be in action than when we think of ourselves as this small, separate me that just is running around trying to get my needs met, trying to figure out everything. And I'm over here and you're over there and we're not connected at all. And we see things as a means to an end. Whereas if we come from this realization of our wholeness, of our oneness with God, that we are already whole, perfect, and complete in that awareness, then we can move into our fifth principle. This is why I say we don't just sit there and say, be the paper, be the essential self. That's all we have to do. Sit on our cushion. Because our fifth unity principle says it's not enough to know these truths. It's not enough to know that this is true, that we are good, but we must live from the truth that we know. And so when we get into alignment with this awareness, then when we start to encounter these obstacles, when we start to question ourselves about things, when we find ourselves in judgment, we don't have to look at it as something that we have to overcome or something that's been put in our way because we deserve trouble. Instead, that we can remind ourselves of this essential nature of ourselves, this essential nature that is all love all the time. And it has no preference. This is the key about this divine love. It has no preference. You are loved whether you are on your A game or you are just messing up all over the place. Really, it doesn't matter. And that feels, sometimes you're like, but wait a minute, what about the people who aren't acting right? Well, sorry, they're just as loved as you are. There's no point system in this. It's good news and the bad news, right? For our human minds, that can feel like bad news. And so when we act from that place, I want to say this too. So Reverend Michael last week, some of you know that he does a Facebook Live on Fridays at 12:30. And he's been doing it since the pandemic started, and he does a little message and a couple of songs. But I was really touched by what he was speaking about last Friday. And in particular this, he said that we can either choose, we have the choice to act from our pain or act from what we know is true. And so when we are in it, meaning in the life, in the mud and the muck of life, which can be beautiful too, of course it has its beautiful moments, but when we are so consumed with what is happening in our life situation and trying to meet every problem with a solution, trying to fix the people we know, anybody else do that, or fix ourselves, then we are sometimes acting from our pain, we're acting from our resistance, our need for it to be different or for someone to be different. And when we tap into that knowing of our wholeness, when we see ourselves as our essential self, we are actually living in the overflow of love. We can be generous with our praise. We can be generous with our compassion, with our forgiveness, not only to others, but to ourselves. And so what does this have to do with falling in love with everyone? Well, we'll see if it does. That still remains to be seen. So Panache, in his book, when he talks about the essential self, we've talked a little bit about this, and he says that we know that the nature of the divine, the nature of the universe is for good, it is for love. And Panache says this about love, this kind of love, that it's not about controlling, achieving, or getting something. It is about the direct experience of the essential self. So to experience directly within you your connection, your oneness with the divine. And when you have access to that internal reservoir, it can extend out to others with compassion, with love. People will feel love from you because that's the energy that you're putting out. And it's radiating from your authentic self, which has been liberated by your own self-acceptance. So you can only radiate out the love that you're willing to give to yourself. And it comes also from your expanded awareness. So if we can look at freedom as the byproduct of knowing ourselves as more than just the stick figure, and see ourselves in the fulfillment of, it comes when we embody that truth, when we can be the love that we wish to see in the world, we can kind of come full circle with this voice that says you must fall in love with everyone. Now, when I heard that voice say that, at the time I was in ministerial school and working here at Unity, and like any good ministerial school student, I went to the Revealing Word, which is a book that Charles Fillmore, our Unity co-founder, it's a collection of words that he gave metaphysical definitions to. Because the word love, that's what I was curious about. Okay, fall in love with everyone. Okay, what do you mean by love? Like, I love pizza. Is that, like that much? Like, what kind? And Charles Fillmore said this about love. He said that is the pure essence that binds together the whole human family, and that it's impersonal, and that it loves for the sake of loving. So it's a pure essence that binds together the whole human family, and that it's impersonal, and that it loves for the sake of loving. So I think about the pure essence of falling in love, and a lot of times we think about this romantic love, but what came to me was the love for a newborn baby. Now imagine if you've been in the room with a newborn baby, maybe it's your child, your grandchildren, a niece, a nephew, a cousin, a friend's baby, it doesn't matter. When you're in that space with this new, beautiful being that somehow just seemed to magically appear in this world, there's nothing but love in the room. We don't look at that baby and say, I'm going to wait to see how this one turns out before I love it, okay? Because if it's got my brother-in-law's personality, I don't know. We don't need we don't need that baby to give us approval before we love it. We simply love it. There's a connection there. There's a felt innocence. And that innocence exists. It seems like it goes away as we become older and we start classifying things as right and wrong and what looks like behaving and what's not. And yet, at the core of all of us is still that beautiful, innocent baby, that pure essence of love. And I think it's interesting that Charles calls this the pure essence that binds together the human family. He uses the word essence. And then Panache uses the word essential self. And both of those have the same root word that mean inherent in the makeup of the thing. So this is essential to us. This is inherent in us, this kind of love. And so the second piece that I thought was so interesting with Charles was the impersonal. Okay, wait a minute. So divine love is impersonal because I want God to like me. I want people to like me because I'm me. And yet, what this impersonal means to me, and maybe you have something that's coming up for you, but what it means to me is that it transcends personality. It's not reliant upon personality. There's a freedom in that for me when I'm calling myself to fall in love with everyone. That doesn't mean that I have to like everybody. Maybe I've let myself off the hook with that one. No, what it means, though, is that there is something that connects all of us, the universality of the human experience, that I can love and remain in a loving consciousness even when people are behaving in the exact opposite way that I would like them to. Even when the people in front of me are not loving me or giving me the energy of separation, whatever it is, or we see this out in the world, that we can stand in this love and say, humans, no matter how their behavior is in the outward expression, at their core they are innocent, at the core they are one with the one, just like us. And so this can really help us with our sense of otherness, with our sense of needing to make people wrong. It doesn't mean that we don't hold people accountable for behaviors, of course, but it does mean that we don't have to kick them outside of our circle of love. And it also means that we will never be, no matter what we do, kicked outside of that circle. And so it's a personal, and then it loves just for the sake of loving. I love this part because it loves for the sake of loving. Divine love does, because that's what it is. That's what it knows to do. And sometimes in our human form, when we're trying to, especially when we're making this move, because this idea of freedom and fulfillment is all about what does it mean to make up my life, some of the things that we drove in, what should I be doing? What will, at the end of my life, what will it look like I've lived a life well lived? And sometimes it feels it's like all about doing things, all about accomplishing things, all about getting the next thing done. And in the reality of it, if we were to know that we are loved simply because we are, and that we can love ourselves just for the sake of loving ourselves, not because we met our expectations for that day, we crossed off everything off our to-do list. No, we love ourselves just for the sake of it, because this is who we are. This is who we are here to be. Then freedom opens up, freedom to really be our authentic selves. We take off the boundaries of needing ourselves to be a certain way in order to get that love. We don't feel like there's a lack of it. We realize we're not in competition with anybody else for it. And so what my blessing for you in this evening is may you know yourself as this pure essence of love. May you know yourself as this conscious awareness, this oneness with the divine. May you see all of the things that are happening in your life as for you, not against you. May you realize that when you experience this freedom, when you tap into this knowing that all is well, and you will be led to your next right and perfect step. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.